Thanks again for joining the Sports Business Leaders Podcast. Today we're joined by Bouker Pool, Managing Director at CTH Advisors and an experienced operator who specializes in building and scaling growth engines for companies really at inflection points. And his work focuses specifically on turning strategy into execution across go-to-market strategies, partnerships, and operations, all within sports, media, and live experiences. Booker, before we dive into the podcast and some of the questions here, would love to hear more about how you ended up here, some of your career experience, and yeah, would love to hear it all.
Well, if I gave you all of it, it would take hours. So I'll give you the condensed version. But yeah, listen, I grew up as a sports fan. I thought I was going to be a talking head on TV, be a sports broadcaster. That's what I went to school for. Then realized there was no creativity and not a lot in that to put my own stamp on it. So I moved into the sports business and was part of the team that brought then back in 1995 the Quebec Nordiques into Colorado as the Colorado Avalanche and turned that rebranded that and we were front office of the Denver Nuggets at the time. So then we became two entities, one front office, super small, very hands-on. I was in community relations. I sold tickets. I sold sponsorships. And then I played lunchtime hockey with the equipment staff, and that's how I cut my teeth in sports and moved through agencies and teams. Went to the Indy Racing League, and then really got into more consumer-based participatory sports when I sold an agency I had and moved to New York and went in-house at what was once known as Rodale Publishing. And they owned Men's Health, Women's Health, Runner's World, Bicycling magazines, and all the digital assets around that. And I built the first sports marketing and events division within that publishing house and built multimedia integrated marketing platforms for big brands like Nissan, American Express, that leveraged the content. This is the sort of the advent of content marketing that we are all, live in now. Leveraging that content from the writers and the magazines and the digital publications and kind of repackaged it for advertisers, and then took it on event tours. And we went to major marathons and running events and health and wellness events and built our own event with the Men's Health Urban Athlon. And then, I got laid off in the great 2008 meltdown of the economy, and one of 111 people from the media industry at Rodale got laid off, and was looking for my next gig, and luckily got snapped up with a private equity firm called Falconhead Capital. Moved to San Diego and became the chief marketing officer of the Competitor Group. And we bought the Rock and Roll Marathon Series and a bunch of media titles and built the world's largest endurance sports platform. We then sold that off to Colorado Capital. I moved back to New York, and then went in-house with Gannett, with USA Today Sports Media Group as the building of that, and kept my finger dabbled in the world of endurance sports because I love running and cycling and love to get outside, and I love outdoor sports. I grew up in Colorado. So, yeah, stayed in that and then left USA Today's Sports and went to, which was sort of the first version of CTH, which was called Alchemy Global, and a small boutique merchant bank firm that worked with emerging growth companies within sports media and entertainment. Andy Bressman there brought me in and started working there, worked on a bunch of projects, and then kind of got recruited to go be the first chief commercial officer for USA Cycling, the national governing body for cycling in the United States, overseeing road, track, BMX, cyclocross, and mountain bike, and worked through that through Tokyo and the great COVID and all our COVID stories. And then left there at the end of 21 after the Tokyo Games and rejoined Andy and his group, which was now rebranded to CTH. So I've sort of been all over the board from traditional, what we know, the major 4 or 5 sports, from hockey, basketball, football, all the way into participatory sports and endurance sports and media. So long road, long winded, but I use it now because my tool chest is full of understanding a lot of different organizations and how they leverage media and how they leverage consumer data. So that's where I am now.
Booker, this is really cool. And I forgot about the USA cycling experience and the fact that you're an
Mhm.
exited founder yourself. And it's
Yeah.
really cool just hearing about that experience because, as you know, Booker, a lot of our community here is based around entrepreneurship in sports. We have a lot of founders, a lot of investors as well. And so it's just great always hearing from people like yourself that have been through it, that have learned how the whole process of starting and growing and scaling and eventually exiting the business goes. So your work, especially right now, it seems like your work with companies, you only work with companies once their product market fit is proven, really. And from your experience as a startup founder, what are a lot of the clear signs that a sports business is ready to scale versus just eager to grow or a little bit too early in the process, if that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the big things in my litmus test is I look for what we call founderitis, and because we see a lot of founders that are super passionate, have a really smart product, but they haven't surrounded themselves with teams and people that are helping them move the business along in a smart way. And they think they know everything and they're very insulated and a bit protected and not so much willing to take on outside advice, take on outside counsel. Um, and that's really an inflection point because if you're not ready for that, everybody says they are because they want investors and they want people to come help them move their business along. But if they're not really willing to take the strategic advice from people around them and stay really narrow focused, we see that as a real detriment and a real roadblock to growth. And so founders get stuck, right? They get stuck and they're like, "Well, I can do everything." And we know they can't. Everybody knows, any founder who's been really successful is you can't wear all the hats. Eventually, you have to trust your team. You have to trust people from the outside to come in, buy into your vision, but also challenge you. Also, as a founder, you have to be willing to be challenged to look at the marketplace in a different, with a different lens. Too often, we're we're faced with founders that are so passionate about sports, so passionate about some technology or something that they forget to pull themselves away from it and put themselves in a sponsored or a consumer shoes and say, I've got to look at this from the outside. I can't, right? They get so focused on what they know and what they're interested in and what fits their personal brand, right? What's exciting to me? What's exciting to me may not be exciting to the masses. And so being able to pull yourself out of that and really look at it and poke holes in it from an outside perspective and allow other people to do so. That's what we really look at is are you ready to take on that challenge of people coming in and blowing up your business plan? It, we may blow it up and put it back together exactly how it was, but it's got to be stripped apart and say, listen, are all the pieces here as the foundation set that it's scalable and sustainable for the long run.
Yeah. We hear it time and time again, just on the podcast with successful founders that we know, that coachability and the ability to listen to your target market are telltale signs of a successful operator. So I think you definitely want to reiterate what you said there. We see that all the time, and it's great to hear you say that. So when you first step into an organization, what would you say that the first operational systems are that you focus on to create sustainable growth?
First to look at is, what are you best in the world at, right? A little bit of a marketing exercise is what are you the best in the world at? What do you own? What's defensible? What have you built a moat around? to say, listen, we have protected ourselves and we haven't built something that somebody else can come in and spend extra money and be done in 2 weeks. So really that's a key when we come in is say, okay, what is that defensible moat that you guys own? What is it? Have you created a piece of technology, or have you created a fan base, or an engagement point with consumers that you can defend and that you can own?
Yeah, that's great advice for obviously the whole SBL community. Thank you for sharing. Now, as you talked about earlier, you've built partnership engines across very different startups and sports properties and for the USA Cycling. So, from your perspective with those different experiences, what separates partnerships that look good on paper from those that really drive revenue and even longer term value?
Data, smart interpretation and analysis of data. In the United States, we have been so focused, and sports is still such an emerging industry. It's still in its infancy stage in the United States. I mean, it was built on media value and impressions, and media agencies and media buyers buying impressions, and it was a spray and pray. Now, as we've become more sophisticated and we have better technology and better tools, it's ownership of data. And then being able to understand that data and those analytics and delivering a consumer experience against those specific data points.
Mm,
No more. Right now, yeah, our main leagues, and I actually was just writing, I wrote something about this, and I've been talking to so many people about this, is traditionally, US sports have been supported by media rights, right? That money is a cushion for all sports. And we used to be able to go into arenas, and teams and leagues had no idea who had the ticket that night, right? Until we got to digital ticketing and transfer of tickets, we didn't know who was in the arena watching the game. So we couldn't deliver that person. All we knew was the season ticket holder or the credit card information we may have, but we had no other data. Now we're way more sophisticated, way more fragmented, but more tools at our fingers to understand our consumers and
mm,
owning that pipeline of content to the consumer. When right, who's watching it on YouTube? Who's right now? It's fragmented. YouTube's doing the best at it, giving us really good data. But Instagram. How do you know who's watching your Instagram reels? How do you know who that consumer is? You don't, right? So figuring out that thread of what data can you own? How can you attach it to the consumer? How can you understand that consumer better and then deliver them more about what they want to have and what they're going to open their wallet for? They're going to buy more merchandise. Are they going to come to more games? Are they going to buy more concessions at games? Are they willing to pay a subscription for premium content? Right? You've got to understand those pieces, because no longer are we as founders of companies and small companies, are are we going to go and play in the huge media rights game? We're not going to we're not going to create new properties outside of uh you know to sell to Amazon or Netflix or whatever. Those leagues are coming, and I think we're seeing a little bit of it now with the growth of women's sports and emerging leagues and stuff. Yeah, they unfortunately, I think they're taking some of the traditional model and looking for rights deals and spending less time in owning the connection to the consumer. I was just reading that League One volleyball just did a deal with USA today, USA Network or USA Network, and I think that's great, and that's terrific for scale and getting more eyeballs on it. But my question to them is, how is League One volleyball building their own ecosystem of ownership direct to the consumer? Are they partnered with USA Volleyball and all the clubs and all the kids that are out playing it and their parents? Right? What's that? It's that connective tissue to your fan base that's growing up through it? Are you just hoping and praying that now that we're on USA Network, people are going to see us and they're going to watch us and we're going to be able to sell some more sponsorships against it? So you've really got to dig in. It's just the fragmented nature of media, the fragmented nature of sports these days demands us to dig in and own more of that connection to the consumer, own more of the data that they are readily going to give us, that we can then create more exciting experiential touch points for them.
This reminds me of a conversation we had with Anthony Brock. His title is the VP of Customer Success of the Flyers. And
Hmm.
he was talking about that same exact concept that you talked about with owning a pipeline of content and data. And at the end of the day, is for a pro team like the Flyers or the Sixers or whoever, owning owning that means keeping the customer's best interest at the center of whatever it is that you're trying to do and using that data to enhance that and make those experiences more exciting, just like you were talking about. And
Hmm.
I love the companies that are popping up around it. For example, one of our clients, they're called True Fan Travel. They are the official fan travel partners of 6 NFL teams. But the reason I bring them up is that they're focused on delivering these premium trips for fans to go to out of market games. So I feel like what you were saying, it's very important to have that data, and ancillary companies can kind of tag themselves along to those experiences to just continue to boost it. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, I think looking outside, sports is global, right? And if you look at European teams and clubs, they don't have the same media rights, sales, and backstop that we do here in the US. So go look at what those clubs, individual clubs, are doing to engage their fan base outside of the big, viewing opportunities. But what are they doing at a very grassroots level to engage those fans and bring them into their environment and wrap them with who they are and what they are, and fuel that fandom within their own environment?
Yeah. Yeah, and that reminds me, Booker, one of the people that is a part of SBL, his name is Roger Loney. He's the chairman of
Hmm.
IK Start in Norway, which is a football
Okay.
club
Yeah.
in Europe. And on a podcast that he was recently on, I listened to, it was the Momentous Sports podcast with Kyle Israel. He was talking about with when he was in Norway after a game, he was going up to the younger fans, introducing them to the players. So it's those experiences that you can create that are unforgettable at the grassroots level, like you were saying, and the games, they're probably not more than 5 or 6 thousand people
Hmm.
for IK Start. So yeah,
Right.
it's cool to hear you say that.
Yeah, and then we trickle down to youth sports and the next generation, and what do they want as social currency to feel heard or seen, right? I have a son who's playing a high school athlete, and I watch it and I study it, and I'm trying to figure out what this next generation, how are they going to consume sports? How are they going to see themselves in what I'm a huge fan of? Like, I'm a huge fan. I have an office full of sports memorabilia, but I'm an old guy, and I watched I watched the whole thing. Whereas I would look at my son, and man, he is scrolling and he's watching little clips, and he knows more than I do. I've watched an entire game, and we're huge Broncos fans, and hopefully Steady picks up the pieces and takes us to the Super Bowl. We'll see what happens there. But he and I have these conversations, and I was like, dude, you know more than I do. And I sit and I watch ESPN. I'm an old school guy, but I love ESPN for you. But he's on Instagram, or he's on TikTok and Snapchat with his friends. He's not watching anything really super long form. He's getting snippets from all these other people, and he's forming his social currency and his conversational pieces with his peers and with me. And I'm like, wow, you're in this thing. You're in it deep, and you know it from every angle. And
Yeah.
so looking at youth, how kids are seeing themselves as athletes, how they're seeing themselves as content creators, how they're seeing themselves, that's another place where we cannot turn a blind eye. The consumption habits of the next generation are going to be vastly different than how we all came up through viewing sports and watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanna bring up one other company, Booker, this reminds me
Yeah.
of. One of our other friends, his name's Chris Shreve from Vocal AI, and
Oh
a
yeah.
cool thing that he just told me about recently was they make custom podcasts using AI. So you can type
Hmm.
in, for example, "Tell me about the Broncos," or "Tell
Hmm.
me what's going on with Jared Stidham for the AFC Championship game," and it'll create a custom podcast, and I did it personally for the Eagles after we lost in the most recent round, and it was spot on. So I feel like
Yeah.
those kind of companies are. It's just really cool to hear all these different, interesting and unique ways that companies are supporting the younger generation of people that have such short attention spans.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. I love that stuff, and I'm a geek, and I love the LLMs and playing with all these tools. And listen, we are just at the tip of what AI is going to deliver, and it's moving really fast. So uh, we don't know what next week's going to hold, let alone next year. So, but technology is defining how the next generation and how our generation is adopting new tools to fuel what we want and to customize our engagement with our teams all the way down to the players, right? We're fan, we're fans of teams by the win-loss record, and we're fans of their success. But we're seeing a great shift into the younger generation following players and wanting to know the stories and the background and everything around these players. Uh, and if they move from one team to the next, they may be still a fan of that team, but they're still a fan. They may be a fan of that player because they've that content is sticky and that content talks to them of who they are as an individual. So we're not only just finding great interest and comfort in wins and losses and being associated with winning teams, but we're finding great alignment with being aligned with players that have cut their teeth and built themselves into a great player and have shown that it's not easy because young athletes are saying, listen, I'm not going from sitting on the bench as a JV to a starter, in the NBA. I want to fit, I want to find the guy who's had the hard road, and I want to figure out what is that content, what aligns with me, and that's my guy.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
100%.
storytelling's so interesting. Content and storytelling, it's so cool right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. Now, just for the sake of time here, I just wanna ask, is there any last words, pieces of advice that you wanna share with the audience? Or even if you could go back to earlier in your career, if you could tell yourself a couple pieces of advice, would love to hear anything you have to share there.
Don't be afraid to fail. Fail as many times and learn from it. Just and don't and I was talking to a college class. Gosh, now it was a bunch of months ago, but they were asking me, how did you get into this? And you know, be humble and enjoy the ride, celebrate the wins, but you know what? Learn from the losses and talk about the failures. Right? I've been laid off twice. My you can look at my resume. Everybody's resume is all the best points. But you know what really defines me and really makes my knowledge super valuable and makes what I do on a daily basis the best is my failures. I have learned more and I use more of my failures as a proving grounds for understanding businesses and understanding things than I do my wins. My wins are wins. They're great. Oh, we did a great job. Awesome. What did we do there? Okay, great. Can we replicate it? Great. okay, why did this fail? Why did I get laid off? Why did my career not go in this trajectory? In there, and it's like data, digging through that, and as founders and as young people, as people in this industry, embrace the suck, man. Embrace the crappy times. Embrace that stuff, bring it forward, learn from it, and don't be afraid, because too often now we sugarcoat ourselves, and we put on these great pictures of ourselves, and we put up great content. But it's part of what's wrong with this country and mental health, and what's going on is we're too afraid to show our weaknesses. We're too afraid to show our failures. We're too afraid to step out and say, hey, I screwed up, or I'm hurting and I can't, I got to figure this problem out. And it's really driving me nuts, and asking for help, right? It goes from mental health to being a small business owner and a founder. Is reach out. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of the tough things. Don't be afraid of the suck.
Yeah, I love it, Booker. Thank you again. And how can the audience stay in touch with you and keep along with everything that you have?
Yeah, gosh, I'm terrible with social media. So, you can track me down on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. That's pretty much my social go-to. And feel free to connect with me and reach out, because that's where I do it. Other stuff is more my kid swimming and doing his sports, and less about my professional life. So